On this week's Clear Voice, Lino Rulli talks about his new book, Sinner.
And we'll take you to Rome to discuss who may become the next doctor of the church. And you'll hear how Pope Benedict is fighting secularization.
It all begins right now on Clear Voice.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Clear Voice. I'm John Monahan.
And I'm Christine Caswell. Clear Voice, the news magazine that brings the world into focus through a Catholic lens. We begin by taking you to Philadelphia.
Former Denver Archbishop Charles Chaput was installed as Archbishop of Philadelphia, at times even sporting a Phillies cap. He's showing people there he's down to earth.
Gotta love the Phillies cap. Many people of the Archdiocese are looking forward to the change in leadership.
Catholic News Service's Chaz Muth has reactions from Philly to the new appointment.
Philadelphia's Cathedral Basilica of Saints Peter and Paul is undergoing restoration. The Archdiocese of Philadelphia is about to undergo renovations of sorts too, when 1.4 million Catholics welcome their new leader, Archbishop Charles Chaput, on September 8th. He will replace the retiring Archbishop, Cardinal Justin Regali. Some Philadelphia Catholics believe a fresh face at the helm will provide a spiritual lift for their archdiocese, which has been rocked by a child sexual abuse scandal.
Sometimes when you have a new face, just looking at things from a different perspective, it brings about a change that may be necessary. So I think from that perspective, it is good.
There's a hope that with someone who is new, things will be different and things will be better. And so I'm sure that's residing in the hearts of many of the people who have suffered and have borne very personally and deeply the pain of our troubles over the last couple of years.
Some Catholics are very specific about what they want from their new Archbishop.
Certainly someone that listens, someone that you can go to without being fearful. And I think the hierarchy of the church is stiff, and I think need to relax. I think people are looking for somebody that can really talk to the hierarchy and have them listen.
In Philadelphia, this is Chaz Muth for Catholic News Service.
And if you missed the installation on Catholic TV, you can watch our coverage by going to CatholicTV.com. Look under the link to America's Catholic Television Network. Pope Benedict recently appointed the 34th Doctor of the Church during World Youth Day events. Now people are wondering who'll be the next to receive this exclusive honor. Rome Reports has more on the possible candidates for Doctor of the Church.
When Benedict XVI named St. John of Avila a Doctor of the Church during World Youth Day, the number of doctors reached 34. The honor is given to those who made contributions to theology, which remain relevant regardless of time. But the question is, who will be next? Well, according to Italian Vaticanist Sandra Magister, for now there are at least 17 candidates on hold. 11 of them are male and 6 are female. The one with the most progress is the case of French priest Saint Louis-Marie Grigon de Montfort. He founded the Society of Mary and came up with the phrase totus tuus, meaning totally yours, used by John Paul II. Among the candidates are Spaniards like St. Thomas of Villanova, as well as St. Ignatius of Loyola, who founded the Jesuits. Several Italians are also being considered, including St. John Bosco, who is the founder of the Salesian Order. There's also Antonino of Florence, who was born in that same city and later became its archbishop. And St. Bernardino of Siena, who preached all over Italy in the 15th century. And St. Lorenzo Giustiniani, he was a bishop and the first patriarch of Venice. French priest St. Vincent de Paul, who dedicated his life to helping the poor, is also on the list. It also includes St. Cyril and St. Methodius, the true brothers who became missionaries of Christianity in the Slavic countries. Then there's St. Gregory of Narek, who was an Armenian monk, poet, philosopher, and theologian. Among the 6 women are St. Bridget of Sweden, who founded the Byzantine order, and St. Margaret Mary Alacoque, a French nun who was beatified in 1920. There's also Saint Veronica Giuliani, an Italian nun who was canonized in 1839, and Saint Hildegard of Bingen, who is mostly known for her religious visions. The patroness of the West Indies, Saint Gertrude the Great, is also on the list, as well as Blessed Julian of Norwich, who was originally from England. Pope Paul VI named one doctor during his pontificate, as did John Paul II. Benedict XVI has named one so far, but it's still unknown if he'll name more in the near future.
And some more notable doctors of the Church include our patron saint, St. Therese of Lisieux, St. Thomas Aquinas, and St. Catherine of Siena. In other news, the recent opening and upcoming dedication of the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial in Washington, D.C. is generating reaction from the Catholic Church. Catholic News Service has more.
I think that while even though he talked about a dream, I think it really was a vision of the kingdom of God. And I think that's why it's endured. You know, while he was a spokesperson for the dream, he was not the origin of the dream. You know, it was really the idea of the beloved community. It really was a vision of the kingdom, and I think that's why I think it has resonated with. He's clearly not simply a symbol for African Americans, because that vision was all-encompassing. And I think it endures because it's bigger than him. It's God's. I think it's God's vision for the kingdom.
Dr. King, first of all, is a preacher. So when you see him emerging out of the rock, the top part is all finished, the bottom part is kind of unfinished, and you see, this work continues. But he was first of all a preacher. He holds in his right hand the letter, and I'm sure this scroll is the letter from the Birmingham jail, which was exactly like the Epistle of St. Paul. Everything, there was a religious motive. He was not a politician. He wasn't an official. He was a preacher who rose up when no one else would raise up and became that drum major for justice. And so what it means to me is kind of light in the middle of darkness. It means love in the midst of hate. It means the victory of God in the midst of defeat. They're biblical principles, and he shared them with the world.
The dedication had been planned for August 28th, which was the 48th anniversary of Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech. But Hurricane Irene forced organizers to postpone the event, and a new date hasn't yet been set. When we come back, we'll be talking with a man who's a self-proclaimed sinner.
Ciao a tutti amici, sono Padre Roberto. Hello to all of you, our friends. I'm Father Reed from Catholic TV. We have our own little Roman holiday here on Catholic TV. It's called Viaggio a Roma, a trip to Rome. I'm going to take you all around the city of Rome to all the places that you'd love to see. Viaggio a Roma, right here on the Catholic TV network. I'm Father Reed. Ci vediamo presto.
Lino Rulli is a 3-time Emmy winner and host of The Catholic Guy on Sirius XM Radio.
And you recently had a chance to sit down with Lino and talk about his new book, which is called Sinner.
The Catholic Guy, Lino Rulli here in Catholic TV on Clear Voice. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Look at this. I've got my book here.
Me too.
I know. I just wanted to try to see if I could show the book before you did, actually.
Absolutely. We're going to show it a lot just for you. Tell me about the inspiration for the book. You open with your dad changing careers. Was this kind of a pivotal moment for you?
No, it's not a pretty common thing when your dad becomes an organ grinder. When your dad becomes the hurdy-gurdy man, not a pivotal moment in a young man's life. Yeah, you know, I had a regular life. My dad was a corrections officer, like a parole officer, you know. And then one day he decides through prayer, it's the problem with prayer. You know, who knows what it really is? God speaking to them, or are they crazy? And so God spoke to my dad, and he decided my dad was going to become an organ grinder. You know what this is? The thing with the crank on it, and there's a monkey dancing around. That's my dad, and I'm the monkey. Pretty big moment in a young man's life.
Was there a market for this?
We're talking about the book? Probably not, but
no,
go ahead.
The organ grinder.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant, is there a market for this type of book? Sure.
Where'd you go? What'd
organ
you do?
grinding Catholic books are huge. You know, back like 100 years ago, there was quite a market. The hurdy-gurdy man would go around town and crank his organ for all to see, and people would throw money primarily to say, shut up, get out of the neighborhood, because we don't want to hear that music playing. And so my dad started going to festivals and just on the streets. My dad worked the streets with his organ. It was a very strange life I had growing up. And he turned it into a market. He turned it into something people really wanted, which once again tells you, with God, all things are possible.
And you had to play a monkey at one point, true?
Yeah, I mean, technically I've been doing that my entire career. Television, radio, I'm still playing the monkey. But yes, I would have to dress up and sort of dance around and ask for change. And we didn't actually have me dress like a monkey. That would have been demeaning. But instead I was dressed almost like a gypsy. Like you didn't know if I was going to ask for money or steal a tooth. It was a very strange youth I had.
You're such a people person, and now you're talking to people about having a little sense of humor with their faith, with their religion, not take things too seriously, own up to your sins, etc. Did this organ grinding, this early taste of fame and being out with people, did that help?
It did and it didn't. It helped me get out of I've got a lot of insecurities in life. And it helped me get out of some of the insecurities. Not all of them. All through the book, you're going to see a lot of my insecurities. But by being with people and by, I think more importantly, what my dad showed me was the importance of being different, of not following the crowd, of not just doing what everybody else is doing. And so even when I wanted to do stuff in media, I wanted to do a Catholic TV show. I wanted to do a Catholic radio show, but I didn't want to do it like everybody else did. And so being with my dad, the organ grinder, kind of encouraged me, Lino, do something weird, do something different, and create the market for what you want to do.
You talk a little bit too about confession, or a lot about confession. And let's face it, not a lot of Catholics go to confession, especially the young folks. Do you think you can help with that?
Can I help? I don't know if I can help. You know, somebody asked me recently, is this a self-help book? And I'm like, well, yes, it should help me financially, professionally, but I'm not trying to help anybody else in the sense that I don't have all the answers. I'm not telling you to go to confession. I'm not telling you to go to church. I'm telling you what works for me. I'm telling you what has happened in my life. I'm telling you about my sins, and I'm telling you about the grace that's come in my life. And if you think, well, you know what, if that Lino can do it, I can do it, I think that's great. But again, you know, let's put it this way. I'd be pushing the confessional a lot harder if I could figure out a way to make money on it. You know, like my book, Sinner. No, but really, I'm not trying to push things upon people because I think that usually turns people off. If you say, you got to go to confession, you have to do this, a lot of the joy, a lot of the freedom that comes from the sacrament of reconciliation is kind of stomped down if you're forcing people to do it. So people read the book. I've got atheist friends who are reading the book. I don't think I'm going to convert them, but at least they know what us Catholics are doing, and hopefully Catholics who read the book go, people still go to confession, and you get it, I think, attractively enough written about that people think, you know what, I'm going to give it a shot.
Who's taught you the biggest lesson in your life, and what was the lesson?
Who taught me the biggest lesson in my life? That's a good question. You should do this for a living.
I should.
And you should. This is excellent work you've got going on. I'm thinking it's, you know, the answer on the Catholic TV show is supposed to be God has taught me the biggest lesson in my life, right? And I think what that lesson is about humility. I'm constantly guilty of the sin of pride, and God is constantly finding new ways to embarrass me. Came to Boston to do the TV, and I show up, and I get the hotel room, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm so important, the book tour. So I take the kit out for the gel and hairspray, Italian stuff, and I take my razor out, and the thing drops in the toilet. And so now I got to fish around in the toilet to shave, and I'm so embarrassed. So even when things are going well, and I think, well, Lino, you've really done something with your life, God is always reminding me about humility, always trying to teach me the lesson of humility.
Lino Rulli, thanks so much for joining us today on Clear Voice.
This was a lot of fun.
And you can find Lino's book on his website, linorulli.com. Pope Benedict has led the fight against secularization since his papacy began back in 2005. Catholic news services Carol Glatz and Cindy Wooden now take an in-depth look at the Pope's efforts in this Vatican report.
In his 6 years as head of the Catholic Church, Pope Benedict has put a lot of emphasis on the urgency of reviving the Christian faith in countries that have become increasingly secular, places where he sees God and moral values being pushed to the margins. He takes this mandate so seriously that he has launched a number of initiatives to bring some muscle to the mission. We'll look at some of those projects today on this week's Vatican Report. I'm Cindy Wooden.
And I'm Carol Glatz. The most significant step the Pope took was to establish the Pontifical Council dedicated to promoting new evangelization. But the Pope continues to call on every part of the Church to be involved in making the gospel known in today's world. I talked with Monsignor Melchor Sanchez de Toca, Undersecretary of the Pontifical Council for Culture, and he had this to say.
Catholics don't consider themselves many times as active members of the Church. That has to change. There has been a sort of delegation. Lay people delegated priests and friars to announce the gospel. They were the experts. So the common faithful is not prepared to evangelize because he hasn't done it ever. You learn to walk by walking and you learn to swim by swimming. So the best approach to evangelizing is somehow to stop discussing about evangelization and to put hands to announcing the gospel. Every Christian has to share the joy of having discovered Jesus Christ.
In October, Pope Benedict is going to meet with hundreds of people who are on the front lines of the new evangelization in the West. Priests, religious, catechists, and especially the Church's new lay movements. The two-day meeting will look at ways to energize Catholics to take their faith seriously and make an impact on the world through charity, social service, education, dialogue, and study.
The Pope also chose new evangelization to be the theme for the 2012 World Synod of Bishops. And as a prelude to the Synod, the Pope held a closed-door think tank session with his former students on the same subject just this past weekend. The Pope told his former students that cradle Catholics haven't done enough. He asked for forgiveness that those raised in the faith have done too little to bring Christ's light convincingly to others.
For Pope Benedict, it's critical the Church help Western nations stay grounded in the Christian values they were founded on, universal values like peace, justice, and the common good. The Pope has said losing a moral foundation will lead to the collapse of society and make nations vulnerable to tyranny because they will have lost all mooring to what is good and true. I'm Cindy Wooden.
And I'm Carol Glatz, Catholic News Service.
Coming up next on Clear Voice.
Prepared to hunker down. I wondered actually, what does this word hunker mean? I had to look it up. I know the word hunk, but hunker literally means to take shelter.
Hi everyone, I'm Father Reed. You know, Catholic TV is all for you, but we also rely on you. Your financial support has brought us from humble beginnings almost 60 years ago to 24 hours of digital TV and a global presence on the internet. Continue to help us provide quality programming that connects people with the Church. Please find this handy envelope in our monthly magazine or send your donation to this address. Through your generosity, we are Catholic TV, and it's all for you.
Women's health is an issue often overlooked in the media when population control and abortion are being discussed.
Some experts recently met on that subject at a conference in Rome, and Catholic News Service was there.
On the agenda and in this report, abortion and various unsafe medical practices that some pregnant women face.
Most of the action was a few steps from St. Peter's Square at an international conference on women's health and the dignity of motherhood. Sponsored by Mothercare International, the World Federation of Catholic Medical Associations, and the Pontifical Academy of Life, the 5-day conference brought together obstetricians, healthcare providers, theologians, and policymakers to look at the best ways to support women and their children. U.S. Congressman Chris Smith of New Jersey said that foreign aid dollars are being used to coerce developing countries into adopting population control measures.
We are in an epic battle. We're having a terrible impact on sub-Saharan Africa, telling them that if you want aid, if you want IMF loans, and if you want what the United States ought to be doing as a good neighbor policy and as a friend, we're linking it and saying you also have to have a population control program that includes abortion. Abortion solves nothing, kills a baby, wounds a mother, and the data is overwhelming that the horrific consequences to the mom on the intermediate and long term, psychologically, physically, and to subsequent children born to her, if she has children later on, it makes it very bad medical policy.
The founder of Modern Care International said that birth control does nothing to solve the root causes of maternal deaths.
If the mothers there who are dying in great numbers are dying because of hemorrhage in the last trimester, during pregnancy, the last 3 months, during labor and delivery and afterwards, or they're dying from obstructed labor, or they're dying from blood pressure problems and infection, condoms and birth control pills, etc., are totally irrelevant. What they require is essential obstetrics. Because there's the tyranny of the culture of death, that there should be a sort of Marshall Plan for mothers. And that should come from the NGO community, it should come from the church. There is money there, it just has to have unprecedented cooperation.
Another conference speaker warned of unsafe medical practices, such as prescribing antidepressants to pregnant women without trying other therapies first.
The evidence, the data, does not support the use of a psychiatric drug as a first line of treatment during pregnancy. Secondly, if they read the data, then they can have an actual risk-benefit discussion with the woman. This is what's not happening in the office. Generally, the prescription writing takes place after a minute or two discussion with the woman, and there really isn't a thorough discussion of the risks. And we find women saying, well, if they had ever told me that there was even this limited risk of cardiac malformation, I would never have said yes to the medication. If the doctor accesses other practitioners in the community and refers the client to them, including practitioners in religious community, the churches, the faith-based organizations, social work services, then you're providing real support to the woman, real hope, very powerful supports that you don't get in a pill.
And now it's time to take a look at the many significant events that have happened this week in the church.
This week in the church on September 8, 1504, Michelangelo's marble statue of David was unveiled in Florence, Italy. On September 10, 1224, 9 Franciscans, originally known as the Grey Friars because of their gray habits, first arrived in Canterbury, England to establish the Franciscan form of life. On September 13, 1547, Pope Paul III suspended the council at Bologna, which ended the first period of the Council of Trent. The council had convened at Trent in December of 1545. The two purposes of the council were to define Catholic doctrines in response to Protestant claims and to carry out reforms within the Church. It reconvened in May of 1551 under Pope Julius III. And on September 14, 1975, Elizabeth Ann Bailey Seton became the first citizen born in the United States to become a saint in the Roman Catholic Church after her canonization by Pope Paul VI. Her remains lie in the National Shrine of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton in Emmitsburg, Maryland. And those are just a few of the events that happened this week in the church.
This week, our old pal Matt Weber takes a look back at Hurricane Irene.
Matt believes that maybe it shouldn't take a natural disaster to make us get ready.
To all the Irenes out there in the world, I forgive you. Your storm was bad, but it could have been much worse. And I must say, like any impending doom, it was more the buildup that got me. The predictions of widespread damage and stressful computer models. Alfred Hitchcock once said, "There is no terror in a bang, only in the anticipation of it." And in the days before this not so big bang, more like a moderate bang, we were told to get our house in order, to be prepared, to hunker down. I wondered actually, what does this word hunker mean? I had to look it up. I know the word hunk, but hunker literally means to take shelter. And so I did. hunkered behind thick walls inland, with no power, sitting in my boxer shorts most of the day. There's no picture for this. And as this hunkered hunkingly, it got me to thinking about the advice of the day. To be prepared. We do not know the time or the place. Have your house in order. Be ready. And I started thinking, sometimes weathermen and preachers have a lot in common. We look to them for answers in times of need. They can help us, but never really with absolute certainty. Well, they won't always be right. They do try all the time. Now, I don't want the takeaway of this piece to be that I think Al Roker and Archbishop Dolan can switch jobs, even though I do think Archbishop Dolan would fit in quite well on the Today Show, but rather let the takeaway be this. From now on, try not to have a massive hurricane make you realize the need to prepare your soul. And understand the importance of, yes, the gerund of the week, hunkering of oneself from any storm life may allow.
I say stock up on the canned goods. You can never be too prepared.
Good advice. You know, it wasn't so bad here in Boston where we live, but on the East Coast, this was a deadly storm.
And we do offer our prayers to all of the families who did indeed lose loved ones during Hurricane Irene. Thanks for being with us this week. I'm Christine Caswell.
And I'm John Monahan. We'll see you right back here next week for another edition of Clear Voice.